looking at I'm going to condense 4 areas or highlight 4 areas for the grant review checklist. And those areas are risk mitigation. First, we're going to look at the grant checklist. We're going to look at risk mitigation, GFADs internal high risk list, and award special terms and conditions. All grant actions and GFAD must go through an administrative review using the GFAD grant checklist. A copy of our checklist is in the packet that you have. And the original section of the original risk assessment section of the grant list was updated last year to incorporate our updated risk assessment process. Prior to last year, we had a piece of risk assessment on our checklist. But after going through all the processes, we redesigned the checklist to make a robust section for risk assessment. Some of the areas incorporated in the risk assessment section of the checklist are it's a debarment and suspension status, where the grants officer has to verify that they've gone in and checked FAPIS, which is the Federal Awards Performance and Integrity System, and that they checked SAMS, which is the System for Awards Management. So all grants officers not only have to go into that system, they have to verify through the checklist that it's been accomplished. The financial status. GFAD verifies that on that checklist that we have obtained an audit. So we verify that we've gone into the audit clearinghouse and gotten an audit. Or if we can't get an audit through the audit clearinghouse, that we've gone back to the recipient and obtained one from them. Prior performance. Another section on that checklist is prior performance. This section looks at the management of prior grant awards, the timeliness in submitting program and financial reports, whether the recipient met the established guidelines, is recipient in compliance, and has there been any previous findings. So all that is the part of the checklist that we do before we issue an award. Information obtained and reviewed in the checklist process is used to determine if there's a need to add special conditions to the award, or if the recipient should be added or removed from GFAD's internal high-risk list, which I'll talk about in a moment. Risk mitigation tools. Part of our risk mitigation tools is GFAD's internal high-risk list, the special terms and conditions guidance, increased monitoring site visit process, and increased technical assistance. Risk mitigation. GFAD developed a risk mitigation tool, which includes the internal high-risk list. Okay, it's in your packets, it's a yellow long sheet. That's our high-risk list that's GFAD uses. Establishing the risk mitigation tools allow GFAD to develop a strategy and or action plan to deal with weaknesses that can affect the grant project's outcome. GFAD found that the use of these mitigation tools can lessen or reduce or totally eliminate adverse actions before they become big problems. So we found that through the use of all of our tools that we have developed, we found that we can train grantees. We found that we can point grantees into PMS training. We found that we can target areas to help them be successful in the projects. And GFAD's internal high-risk list. The internal high-risk is just as it says, it's internal. We don't share that list outside of our office. That list is only for our grant officers, for a place where they can go to see if an award that they are now working on has been determined to have some kind of problems. Because before then, there was no place centralized that we could look at to see whether a grantee was having a problem. I may have North Carolina, Sharif may have another North Carolina award, and Stephanie may be working on another North Carolina award. They're all North Carolina, but they're under different award numbers. So I may have a problem, but Sean doesn't know about it. So doing that internally allowed us to have a centralized place and where all of us could look and see whether there is a problem which mitigates risk. And that internal list is broken down into open and closed cases. So once a recipient has satisfied any special terms or conditions or any issues or problems, they're moved from that open portion of this, thank you, Sean, and moved down to the closed portion. Special terms and conditions. If GFAD finds that a recipient needs to have special terms and conditions added to the award, these are some of the things that we can require. We can require payments as a reimbursement rather than advance payments. We can withhold authority to proceed to the next phase until receipt or evidence of acceptable performance within a given period of performance. We can require additional or more detailed financial reports. We can require additional project monitoring. We can require a grantee to obtain technical or management assistance, or we can establish prior approval. And 2 CFR Part 200 is where special conditions are that can be added to the award are found. That's the guidance that covers that.
Thank you, Janet. So, all things that we bring in our toolbox have to help us somehow. And this is one thing that we have in our toolbox, which is the site visit process. Our site visit process is very robust. We have an 8-page document that we send out to the recipient prior to conducting a site visit, and we receive back the completed site visit questionnaire in addition to the supplemental information. I just did one of these, and it was 25 pages, including the supplemental information, and it provided me and the program staff with a great snapshot of how the recipient was currently conducting the award. And we did a transaction statement where we took a look at transactions that were currently occurring on the award and how they were handling that, any policies and processes that they had in place, roles and responsibilities. I'll give you a brief example. In the recent site visit I conducted, one of the findings were that the roles and responsibilities were not diversified enough. So more people needed to handle more roles and responsibilities in regards to conducting transactions within the office. So it provided us with a great snapshot in which we were able to assist the recipient in allowing the recipient to better utilize federal funds.
So another one of our remedies is increased technical assistance. The risk assessment may indicate a need for increased or targeted technical assistance. And the technical assistance isn't just for those recipients that are deemed high risk. We found through our implementation of this process that recipients of all risk levels can benefit from technical assistance. The objective is to improve the ability of DHS recipients to administer federal grant funding, and the assistance is adapted to fit specific needs of the recipient. And the technical assistance that we implement comes in many different forms, by telephone and electronic information, such as online financial payment training and webinars. Also, we have development of models and so forth. He just gave me the clock, so I'm going to let you guys read the rest of these, and we'll move on to the next session, which is remedies for non-compliance, which Janet is going to speak about. So what do we do once we've done the risk assessment, we put in special terms and conditions, we've gone out and visited, and we put in all of this time, effort, and resources into making sure that our recipients have the best tools available to implement the awards, and we still have problems. Well, we have a few different remedies that we can take, and Janet will speak about those.
GFADs non-compliance remedies include, but are not limited to, temporary withholding cash payments pending correction of a deficiency, disallowing all or part of an award, disallowing all or part of the cost of the activity or action not in compliance, wholly or partly suspending or terminating the federal award, recommending suspension or debarment proceedings be initiated by DHS, withholding further federal awards for the project or the program, or other remedies that may be legally available. And those procedures can be found in 2 CFR Part 200.
Thank you. So I'll quickly talk about the successes and challenges that we've had with our risk assessment model. We started this process in 2016, and it started with 2 different programs, 2 different grant programs. And what we realized from our pilot was that there was a need for technical assistance. And if we provided that technical assistance, that helped alleviate a lot of problems. Another thing that, so that was from the recipient standpoint. And from the program standpoint, we learned that they were very receptive to our risk model. They were just a little leery about us declaring some of the recipients as high risk. So our approach is to have an internal list for our usage. And from the staff, our colleagues were not shy about letting us know what they thought about our forms and checklists that they now had to complete. So we got a lot of feedback in 2016 about those. And we were able to incorporate that feedback into 2017. We updated forms, we updated checklists, and letters and so forth. We implemented the model to all of our grant programs. And what we've learned is that we haven't really encountered pretty much any resistance to it. The programs are very receptive to it. The recipients are receptive because they get an opportunity to learn where their weak areas are and where they can make some fine-tuning and some adjustments before they start spending taxpayer dollars. We do understand that this is a moving target. We're constantly taking a look at our procedures, taking a look at our forms, making updates as necessary. So we will continue doing that moving forward. I'll turn it over to Sean now.
So this is still an emerging area in federal grants. Now the book hasn't been written yet, and we all hold the pen for most of it. Now there's no organization that's too big or too small that can't benefit from what we're doing with risk. performing is a bigger challenge than compliance. And although we see more emphasis on risk within program awards requirements, the mission of the organization still is that to deploy the program by looking at risk to ensure that the taxpayer funds are being good stewards of taxpayer funds. Our panel would like to thank the organizer of the CFO Symposium. We'd like to thank Sonia Demas and Mary Mahoney with the Office of Financial Assistance Policy. And of course, we want to thank our supervisors, Marcia Mathis and Lisa Johnson, for looking over all of our drafts, and our team members at GFAD who provided us such great feedback that Sharif was alluding to everything that we were doing, and to making what we consider that this was a successful deployment of a risk management policy. I know we packed in a lot, and I know we're near time, but if there was any information that you needed from us, we have a pad on the table here that you can request forms. We'll be happy to share whatever information we have to share with you. We have the site visit questionnaire, which is, umpteen pages, 8 pages, and the other additional forms that you'll find on your table, but maybe one on electronic copy. But if you have information you'd like to share with us, we'll be happy to hear that information. And of course, we would be happy to respond to any questions that you have right now with some answers or some more questions from us. All right? Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Yes.
Just a quick question about this is Sebastian Deacon, GPD grant program. About the forms themselves, are they a sort of standalone effort, or are they part of a bigger system that you guys use? I mean, they just look very sophisticated.
Yeah, they're standalone. All right, well, we thank you guys.